Welcome to the Reality After Show covering MTV's The Challenge, Season 39, Battle for a New Champion, Episode 19, Only One Gets the Crown. I am your host, Alex Trias, joined by my ride or die who will drink all the drinks and not bitch out for having to go down a cliff. It's Dan Montchal. Dan, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I can't tell you how excited I am that for the second time in 2 years or whatever, we had a finals champion that was essentially decided by a Sudoku puzzle. So pretty pumped about that we decided to bring that back.
And to be honest, do we really believe that Berna completed the last thing?
Oh, absolutely not. She was struggling with the circles. There's no way she was figuring out the numbers.
Well, no, her last thing was she cheated off of Colleen to get the Sudoku done.
Oh, okay, what was Berna's last one?
She had her, Colleen, and Nerys were on that balance thing with the 3 pillars.
Okay, that was her last station.
But I'll be honest. I'm like, as soon as they're like Colleen and Corey are halfway through, I'm sure someone probably was like, just start running. Just start running.
At that point, just let her go. Yeah.
Right. But we're here to discuss everything that happened in part 2 of the final, as well as just looking back on the season as a whole. So, where we left off, Emmanuel won the chaos phase of this final. Obviously, even though he says he wished he never even had the power, then I'm like, boy, just shut up. He picks Nerys because that was the only person he was ever going to say, because he loves having her name in his mouth. But when it comes to figuring out, they still do the draw. But instead of it just being 2 names and chaos, they have 2 chaos pillars and 4 for the other 4 players. And that's actually how we end up with Mariah as the other person.
Yeah, I predicted the right matchup, just not how we were going to get there.
Not how we got there. Yeah.
I didn't factor in the draw.
We did not factor in the draw. But really very lackluster elimination, which also seemed that they took like several hours off before doing it, because it was light out when this decision was made, and the elimination was at night.
Well, it took a long time to walk over to the boxes,
Yeah,
it's a long walk.
But yeah, the elimination was literally just, here's a bunch of blocks, put them into this other bigger box, and Nerys wins. Like, I don't know what else you want me to really say here. It looked like Mariah should have won multiple times, but couldn't get the last piece in. But it's what it is.
It's elimination we never really need to see again. I'm fine if they want to use that component at like a stage, a checkpoint for a final or something like that, because I understand what they were going for there. It probably isn't all that difficult to figure out how the boxes fit in, like in the right position, but it's just you have that small opening of getting all of them to fit inside the box. But yeah, there's really not much to say about it.
There's not much to say. I do know the only thing to say is on Mariah's exit. Like, Mariah actually put on her TikTok like the full thing of what she said that she needed to do, because the show only gave us, oh, I'll need to become stronger. Next time you see me, I'll be stronger. But in her, like, the uncut version, she does mention how she needs to work on her puzzle game and like just like working on all these little things so that if she were to come back again, even though it's not an if, all these people think that they're going to be brought back like a million times. But she'll be more well-rounded coming back.
She at least got final words, not like Jay, where they're just like, yeah, like, shoo, get on out of here.
Really? Yeah. It's like they did not give Jay anything to finish off, which is weird because he has one of the more likely chances of being called back, I feel.
Yeah, if you're picking people who are going to come back on the season, love them or hate them, and most people, including us, have switched to more the hate side as the season has gone on. But if you're picking 5 people that are going to be back on the show again, Jay has to be one of those 5 that production is going to call back. Now, it may just be for their own enjoyment to see him get destroyed, but I would be shocked if we didn't see Jay again on a challenge at any point.
But yeah, but like you could say that about a lot of people on this season of like, oh, we'll bring them back because it'll be hilarious to see them lose or get knocked out early by these vets that were like, no, you had your one chance, you blew it. Now you're never going to see it again. But yeah, so Mariah goes there. So we're now at our final 5 of Nerys, Emmanuel, Berna, Colleen, and Corey. And Colleen's saying that she's the threat. And I was interested by that because I'm like, because obviously these things happen afterwards. And I'm like, well, why does she have this perception? Why is she pushing this? Obviously, you have your egos. But I'm like, she was in last place for basically everything. So I'm like surprised why she has this confidence. It sort of comes off as like, where is it coming from? We see later in the episode sort of why this confidence sort of, I think, is imbued at the end with the last checkpoint stage, and obviously coming in third. She sort of had a good come from behind to win some money. You can argue that it was more because of his very bad collapse. But
yeah, I mean, she showed some promise in the second half of this final, but I don't get where all that confidence comes from. I mean, good for her for having it.
Yeah.
But if you were just coming into this, who were you going to pick Colleen over other than Berna?
Yeah. Basically.
Because
and it's no shade. It's just that the other 3 people on paper were better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we have that, and now they're not allowed to sleep. They're not allowed to sleep at all tonight, and they give them an activity to do. But like, if you're among the first 3 to complete this activity, you can get one of the 3 items of a pillow, a blanket, or a chair. And you get to sabotage the people by adding more pieces for them to have to work on it. Honestly, I didn't need this. Like, there was no stakes, truly, based off of if you won or not. It would just be like, oh, I get to be slightly warmer at night. Like, you're still staying up. You're not getting the luxury of going to sleep. And honestly, the activity, I wouldn't have been complaining as much as some of these competitors were, because I'm like, sure, you're tired. Sure, you just want to rest. But I'm like, at least gives you something to do to kill time. Because after you're done, now you're just there.
That was my thought with it is, sure, I mean, I'm sure it sucks on your fingers trying to move the blocks up through the grate. It can be annoying, tedious, but it gives you something to do where if you're just sitting there on a rock or sitting there on the beach, that's where you're more likely to fall asleep. Now, no one does fall asleep, so we don't know what the penalty would have been.
Mm-hmm.
But give me that. I think that's the better route to go. I also didn't like that you saw they were all sharing, pillows and blankets and stuff like that. Like, no, that I won that. That's mine. You can't have it.
Yeah, there should have been a penalty for sharing.
Should have been a penalty for sharing.
We also don't know if there were stakes for completing the challenge. It didn't say you have to finish. They just said the first 3 get these items and can sabotage people.
Yeah, I wonder if there was more there that we didn't know that they had to finish, so there wasn't, like an Angela situation. They won.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. But I at least like that there was an overnight. They had to stay up all night. I think I know my favorite version of it is either the free agent style where they have a task to complete, and then once they complete it, they can sleep, and you'd make it harder than it obviously was. Or even something like this, having them stay up all night. I feel like that's classic challenge when we got into the 2-parters of, well, one person is allowed to sleep, but the other's allowed to stay up. But since you're all individuals now, no, you have to stay up. Make them stand on a stump or something.
Mm-hmm. And we do also, so they get through all this stuff. Nerys finishes first, obviously sabotages Emmanuel and Colleen. Colleen says it's because she's a threat, and I wrote in my notes, no, it's because you pissed her the hell off all season and also tried to vote her in when Corey was doing his elimination against Jay. So I'm like, that's why you both get it,
Yeah,
honestly.
she's not scared of you, Colleen. She's just
Yeah.
not.
Emmanuel is just more, yeah, also just like, you always say my name and you are my threat to win,
Yeah,
which,
you're my threat, and you threw me into elimination. That's justification enough.
yeah. And like, to be fair, Emmanuel gets it. It's, he doesn't complain about it. It is what it is. He still is the second person to finish, even with all that. Then Berna, then Corey, and then Colleen finally finishes. Um, but really, that just gets us to day 2. And day 2 is you are going to start with a 2,000-meter swim, which for us Americans, it's like about a mile, like a mile and a quarter
Okay.
of swimming, which is a lot. That's a
Yeah,
lot.
it's a long swim.
It's basically you're swimming from one island to another island, and that's where all of stage 2 is going to be, where there are 3 different checkpoints. But before you get to those checkpoints, you're still running based off time to this first station, which we see is that rappel, or the cliff rappelling. But you have to get there, finish your drink, and that's when your time stops, and that's how they dictated who got to go when. This is the one part I actually at first I didn't like, so I was like, why are you making them all stop? Just let them go in real time. But I liked at least that they time tiered it specifically here, where it wasn't like, okay, you all got here, now you can all start. Like, and it seemed like they had legitimate gaps. It wasn't just like, oh, Emmanuel, you get a 30-second head start. Okay, now everyone else gets to go. It felt like it was more structured and as realistic as it could be based off how they came in.
Agreed, because you see that Corey finishes just before Nerys, and it seems like Nerys is starting right after Corey, where then there's seems like a significant gap before Berna starts. So maybe it wasn't the exact times, but I felt like it was at least spaced out properly, where Emmanuel clearly had a huge advantage because he finished first. The other 3 were kind of grouped together, and then Berna had a significant disadvantage finishing so far behind everyone.
Right. So yeah, so we have all that. No one really struggles with the swim. Like even Nerys, like Nerys is last there, but obviously because she's the worst swimmer. She knows she's the worst swimmer, but she wasn't even that far behind Berna. Everyone really doesn't have a problem with doing the drink anymore. Like they all do it. They throw up if they need to, but Berna's like psychologically like checking out at the fact of seeing this drink. And at that point, I was with Nerys. I'm like, just quit. Like that part actually somewhat bothered me, because also when she went for the drink, she was doing that type of drink where like it wasn't even hitting your mouth. It was like all going off of her, or not even going in. She like it once again didn't even look like she completed the full drink in the bottle. And I was just like, just let her quit. Like there's so many stages here where I'm like, stop intervening. Stop. That's why I hate the pauses in finals now. It's because like in a real final, when we were like back in the heyday, it was just continuous motion. You do your checkpoint, you keep moving. You do your checkpoint, you keep moving. There was no pausing of everything and letting everyone like sort of collect themselves, and then okay, now we can do this next stage. It's the same thing with Corey right after, where Corey is now freaking out justifiably about heights. Like if you're not a heights person, anything involving heights is going to get in your head. Look at Darrell. Like Darrell literally would quit dailies just because it was over heights. And you know what? I will defend Corey a little bit here. Sure, TJ calls it a baby hill. Um, but carabiner forwards or repelling forwards is something I've never seen. And
It's something, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No. Go ahead.
It's something that I kind of want to crush Corey here. I'm not going to.
That's fine.
And
That's fine.
for the I just thought it was, you made it all this way. You know, heights are going to play a portion into this. And we haven't really seen Corey bothered by any of the heights that we've seen in past challenges. He hasn't really talked about it too much. And wanting to quit there and being done, I thought it was a bit over the top. I was, you wanted to see more of TJ dig into him, but TJ probably can't do that anymore. I'm sure he's being told not to do that. But I guess the one thing that I'll give him a pass on is, like, I'm someone that heights don't bother me. So I really can't speak of what that fear is. And obviously, I've never done that forward rappelling down. So I don't know what it's like to be physically there and doing that. But heights don't bother me. I know other people that have the fear of heights. It is like a crippling anxiety. So I'm not going to crush him too much for it. I just thought it was a bit over the top. We didn't need as much time of him freaking out as what he was.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree because like I would say I lean more towards like the Corey and Darrell side. Like I have a healthy fear of heights. Like I think of the Triple X like one where they skydive to start the final. Like I can't skydive. Like I probably could if you like had me harness this on. And you're like, well, it's not your choice anymore, and you push me off. Like then it's just like it is what it is, and I'm, you know, having a mental breakdown while doing it. But I'll do it. Um, this I feel like these type of things where it's more structured. You have the the harnesses and everything. Like I would feel more comfortable doing it. Like I wouldn't feel great about it, but like that's part of the challenge. The final isn't about you doing a bunch of things that you feel good about. It's testing yourself, going past your norms, the things that you're scared of. You persevere and you find a way to get through it. Like you have it with Nerys, who was like later on having a little bit of a freak out because you had to go and like dive, quote unquote, dive under the water. But then she decided, you know what, I've gone this far. I'm not going to let myself stop because I'm feeling like a little bit of a baby bitch here. She goes on and does it. And that's the thing that I want to see is you overcoming the fear.
No, I completely agree. And for most shows, I'd say, hey, there's safety equipment. You're going to be perfectly fine. The challenge is
The
the one little
challenge.
asterisk where I'd be like, if something was going to go wrong, it probably would be on this show.
And that part I was like, it was buried in my mind because I remembered the stories, especially from All Stars, about some of those harnesses and the people doing them.
Well, and how much does history change of things if, like, Jordan's, I've said it before, he's like an X-Men, like Dirty 30. He
Right.
fractures something in his leg, but he still keeps going and he wins. If it got to be significant enough where on the skydive down, it pulled him from the final, I think that changes everything moving forward.
Right. But like I don't think it would have changed this. Like
No,
I think
that's fair.
they would just be like, and to be fair, since then, when have we seen them skydive? I don't
No,
believe they have.
I only remember seeing skydiving twice. It was this and it was diving into Rivals 3. It's the only two that
Right.
come to the
And
top of my head.
yeah. But like the point being, it was like after Triple X,
We haven't
I
seen
don't
it.
believe we've ever seen it again. And I think they try to do more things that are where like, oh, you're free falling, but it's like you're in a harness, which now the only thing which that from Corey's side, I also agree with is but what if it gets stuck? What if it breaks? What if the person who made this didn't make it right? And I go down and then suddenly I'm free falling to my death plummeting against this cliff.
I think there you were more likely to see an injury where you saw that Corey was kind of flailing his way down and bumped
Mhm.
over into Nerissa's line and kind of hit her a little bit. I think
Yeah.
that's the only place where you were going to see a potential injury happen, but whatever.
Well,
Corey did it. Good for him.
honestly, we should have used that as a warning because part of that's all about balance as well. And like he has a disadvantage of being like a bulkier, bigger guy, where I feel like going downhill like that and like trying to get your feet under you, like you're gonna be more clumsy to begin with. But it was showing a little bit of his clumsiness. uh
It it
which
was.
was his detriment.
It definitely hurts with the balance. I mean, we know throughout this entire episode, we see he doesn't have good balance, but he does have the advantage of being a bigger guy. He really, all that he needs to do is fall. His momentum will take him forward because he has all that weight behind him.
Yeah, it's sort of like with this checkpoint in particular, is like you have to be okay with the fact that like, you're going to get hurt and You're going to get a bunch of bumps, scrapes, and bruises, but that's sort of what it is. Control it as much as you can, but you need to like keep a good pace, especially when you watch Emmanuel basically fly down it. It's like this guy's in the lead. This guy's going to get to the first checkpoint first. Like you need to cut as much time as you can. You can't just be taking your time going down this anymore. Like you lose the chance of safety when you see the first person just basically go in a full out sprint down the line. Which, like, good on Emmanuel. Like, the one thing you're going to hear from me throughout this entire episode is, as much as my faults with him as a character, as a competitor, he's a great competitor.
Oh, I think he absolutely sucks, but I'll give him his flowers when they're deserved.
There you go.
It's just more he sucks as a person, not as a competitor.
But another thing I want to bring up note is, like, we started the final and we heard Mariah and Berna talking about Berna's, like ruptured or pulled a groin injury of some sort. Apparently it was overhyped if she was able to do all these things in day 2 because like having a harness on a bad groin going downhill where you need to be controlled like that. I feel like that should have just taken her out right then and there.
Well, especially because when we were seeing clips for, I don't know if it was for the season, but definitely around the midway part, there's a part where like a little clip where Berna's kind of like collapsed and like crying. And looking back on it now, it almost seems like it was on one of those long, narrow stretches where they're starting that and ending it. And I don't know if there was something else that happened there, if that came in a different place, but we did have a little clip of that, but I don't remember seeing that anywhere throughout the season. Oh, was it last week?
It was last week. I think after the first, it was after the first challenge was done with the ball or like getting the ball and the rope out.
Okay.
Before she gets paired with Emmanuel and suddenly she's fine.
Tells you how locked in I was. My bad. We did see that. Just
no, it's good. It's like, but I could have told you it was because of the drink.
That would have made the most sense.
I mean,
her just crying.
She keeps crying about it.
I did love. I saw, and I can't remember who tweeted it out. Is because we started with Berna at the beginning of the season, and you had some sympathy for her because you have the cultural differences. She, English isn't her first language. And so you wanted to give her as much leeway as possible for understanding, being like, what's this really like for Berna? But as she kept going on and all the crying, all the bitching, it was just too much. And it's just like, if your life is really as rough as what you say it has, which maybe it truly has, I have no idea. You are used to adversity. You cannot tell me this is how you've battled adversity your entire life, because she wouldn't be where she is now if that's the case. It was just way over the top and too much.
This is my thoughts on Berna for this final, because I don't want to like harp on her too much in this episode. It's like she's not someone that I need to see back. Like I think her story ends with, she was able to complete a final. She was able to finish it. I should say finish it, because I have another complaint coming up very quickly. But she gives me Anissa in All Stars.
Okay.
I wanted to finish the final. I'm going to walk during the running portions. I'm always going to be in last place. I just want to be able to finish it because of the adversity that I came through. Because like that's a big thing with Anissa's story too. Like I see parallels between the two. And in the sense of when she's breaking down about having to drink this drink again, which at this point you've had it like 500 times, so your body should at least be semi-accustomed to it at this point. Like you have Emmanuel who was like throwing up at the beginning with it, and now it's just like tossing it back like it's a shot and continuing on. You even have like Colleen in the confessionals being like, Berna's just trying to be a victim right now. Just like get through it. You did, like we all did the same things you did. Why are you saying you want to quit right now because you have to drink this drink when you didn't even eat the food? We all eat the food and we drank this drink. So like shut up and drink.
Yeah, she's lucky she was able to time out on the food because in past challenges, it's you got to finish it.
Yeah, and like I'll give it for day one for the timeouts, just for all of it. I am not a fan of timeouts in day two of the final. So let's get into it. They all go down the Caribbean. The first checkpoint is the tangram puzzle. And for whatever reason in this final, Nerys is not good at tangrams anymore.
She's not good at
She was good.
puzzles.
Well, she was good at some of them, but it was like for whatever reason, and maybe a big portion you could blame fatigue. But I would have had like this idea that she would have been able to do better. I'm not saying she did horribly, but like she times out on the tangram here. Basically everyone but Emmanuel and Colleen time out in the first checkpoint. So Emmanuel's in first, Colleen's in second, going into checkpoint 2. Nerys, Corey, and Berna all time out. And I'm of the mindset of there shouldn't be any timing out in the second stage where it can matter when no longer time is a factor and it's just whoever finishes first. Like there is a world where Berna wins, and I'm like, that's the worst outcome of these 5. Is it Berna won after all these like moments where she was basically going to quit, because that isn't a champion made through adversity. It was a champion made in spite of not facing the adversity.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's another parallel to USA 1 where some of the puzzles you were able to time out on and others you weren't, where I completely agree with you. You're on day 2 of the final. This is now just a race to get to the finish line. There is no timing out. You figure it out and you finish it, or you have to quit. One of the two.
Right. So they all time out. We move on to the second checkpoint. The second checkpoint is going underwater to get an answer key and replicating that answer key on land. And very quickly, I'm realizing like, oh, this is challenge champions. I don't know how far back they were going or if it was all of them. And it was obviously in some sort of order of, I would think, like top left through bottom right, from oldest champion to most recent champion. Because the last 2 were Tori and Devin, which I'm like,
And
was there a specific order there for those 2? Because like we see with Colleen's mix up of like 2 names, and I don't know if it was because it was a gap in the season or whatever.
it
But
it
it
did
started with
look like
Veronica.
older. Yeah, it did look like the older champion because you had Veronica was up there and you had Coral, but it wasn't in the order that they went because the one thing I did notice was it had I think it was about midway down on the puzzle, you had Wes, Laurel, Bananas. That was the correct order, which obviously Bananas got his first win prior to Laurel, so it wasn't in like just going chronologically, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if it was something based off of age or just like grouping kind of tier seasons together so that it was the
Yeah.
oldest up top and the newest down in the bottom right. But I
And
wasn't able to
that
pick
was
up
the
on
other
what
part.
the rhyme or
Yeah.
reason for it.
Yeah, and like I didn't do screen grabs or any of that. Like I thought it was just champions. Like I thought people show up multiple times on it, but I could have been wrong. It could have been just when they got their first championship and moved on. But I also noticed that I think they were including like all stars in there at the very least. I don't know about the other shows. Um, but Emmanuel finishes first again there. Then we see, and I actually did. Usually, I'm not a fan of it, but I like to hear Nerys and Corey sort of looking at each other, being like, "We can't let Emmanuel get this big of a lead. We want one of us to win." We've seen it very clearly that Corey has said online and everywhere that he gained a lot of respect for Nerys, and also part of him is like, "Well, if she can help me finish this part here, I feel confident that overall I can outrun anyone if we're close. I can outrun them." Um, so mutually beneficial. They help each other. They are second and third out the gate. They move on to stage 3 to follow Emmanuel. And then we have Colleen finally finding out her mistake, fixing that, and leaving her board up so that Berna can copy it. She's like, Berna's been such a good ally to me. Maybe she'll return the favor after. Narrator. She did not.
I think it was more pity that Berna sucks. She can't figure this out. Let's help her out a little bit.
Because I'm like, there is potentially a world where she's still there. Really, she's still up at the cliff trying to figure out and getting the mental fortitude to drink this horrible drink.
At this point, just let her go. She's coming in last. Like, I don't love it, but like
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
like,
even necessarily love Corey and Nerys helping each other, but it's something that always happens. Like, this isn't the first time that two people have helped each other in the final, so it doesn't bother me either.
right. When we live in a world where everyone like blatantly helps each other, and in a world where only one person can ultimately win, I like have less of a problem with it because it's now sort of like you're adding strategy into like, well, am I going to? I need to get further. I don't know what's blocking me. By helping someone who is a competitor and a threat to me winning, I still give myself a chance to win because we'll finish quicker together than apart.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's a toss up how you really feel about that. But that moves us over to checkpoint 3, which is the conquest elimination format. Instead of 3 sections, there's 5 sections, and you have to complete the task at all 5 stages and complete the obstacles that get you to them. Grab your flags. Once you complete all 5 tasks, have all 5 flags, plant those in, and run to the finish line where TJ's going to be there to hopefully be happy in declaring you a challenge champion. So the 5 things we have here are a Sudoku, a how many circles are there
Plus, there's like a
puzzle.
math equation, I think. Like, you count the
Well,
circles
yeah.
and then, yeah.
Yeah, I just remember it was like how many circles and then there was math, but I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
My notes can only be so thorough.
I don't think we even knew what the equation was. It just
We just know it was
included an equation.
102.
Yes.
It's 102. Um, you had a smash a barrel until it's flat and square and put it in the box. The sliding disc thing, and then that pendulum with the 3 stacks again. And Emmanuel's there pretty early compared to the field, but he decides to start with the Sudoku, and he's stuck at the Sudoku. And a lot of people end up getting stuck at that Sudoku this time around. And that I pretty much put all into fatigue. Your brain
Mm-hmm.
is just dead at this point. You can't think. And that's why I applaud Emmanuel and Nerys for like going in, trying it, and then both being like, no, let me get other stuff out because if I keep staring at this, I'm never leaving here. I need to go
Mm-hmm.
and do the other stuff. So then I at least know this is the only thing now. This is the only thing that's stopping me from moving forward. Obviously, Nerys then goes back because she then gets frustrated at the pendulum. But this is where I was like, oh, if Nerys is here and like Emmanuel hasn't finished Sudoku, I'm like, oh, she has a real chance now because she's familiar with this. Like this, like everyone's gonna have to compete it, but like this should be now getting part of her muscle memory because she had to do it back to back so close to this final, and some of them are identical to what she had to do. So, but Corey is the one who shows out first. Corey is the first one to get the 4 flags, and then Emmanuel, then Nerys, and then they're all at the Sudoku, whereas Colleen and Berna have to sort of catch up from behind. And ultimately, they all do get to 4 flags. But with Colleen, especially, it was like she was the first one to hit the Sudoku. And then I was like, oh, crap. Like, Colleen might go on a run here. And she does. Like, she starts going through all of them, just like ramping them out while everyone's still just staring at the Sudoku. Love her turning around and just like stopping herself on the balance beam when she hears like within seconds of her finishing that Berna finished, and Berna trying to be so adamant that she did not cheat off of Colleen, and everyone's just like,
Yeah.
girl, why you lying?
Yeah,
Why you
we know
lying on
Berna
us?
cheated.
We know you, Berna. You did not just suddenly become Nostradamus and just finish this.
Speaking of Colleen, somewhere around here, she has her one comment where she's talking and being like, what I learned from the mini final is that you need to stay calm and keep moving on or whatever. I was like, well, that's clearly ego talking because we can roll the clip of you going through the mini final and you were dead. Your calmness was because you
they
were
told her to
dead,
just
lying
stay
down.
calm and keep moving. They just wanted her to keep moving. And she did.
Colleen's team finished or got as far as what they did in spite of her, not because she was there helping.
I mean, yeah, T, no T. But we are now at a point where she could get this lead because Corey is struggling with this balance beam. Brutal. Very brutal.
You can't do it. I mean, that's one
You
of the
can't
things
do it.
I think is balance. Sure, you can work on balance, but for the most part, it's kind of something you have or something you don't.
But the one thing, and it's the same thing with Burner with the drink. It's like the more you let yourself just stand there staring at it, thinking about it, like you're allowing your head, your subconscious becomes your conscious, and you're just like you are telling yourself you can't do it before you even do it. So that's why you're going to keep on failing. Even if you're not good at it, there's ways to go about it. Like with a balance beam, especially one that's moving, I'm like, speed is your friend. Speed's your friend. Not let me try to be perfectly balanced. It's run it. Run it. Do like a little side hustle on it. Whatever you need to do just to get to those other planets. Because they made it clear here was you're allowed to touch those bars as soon as you got to the other side. And like that's what he should have been trying to do. Was what you were doing wasn't working, and it was being slow, trying to go foot by foot. You should have just tried for speed.
I just assumed that Corey was, he's a big Survivor of Vanuatu fan and was just an homage to Chris and the Fat Five on the balance beam.
Oh God. But
the one thing I did like about this balance beam was that it wasn't that far off the ground, so people couldn't not cheat, but you see now where they kind of sit down on it and slide across. I like that you did actually have to walk the entire way across.
Oh, for sure. But Emmanuel's now the first one to finish all 5 because he finally completes the Sudoku, while Nerys is now having to do the pendulum. And so he gets to go out, and at that point in time, everyone knows it's a wrap. Emmanuel's gonna win. Nerys then does finish, and we don't know what the time difference is between them. I don't think it's a horrible amount of time in between, but I think it was like enough where it was never going to be like a Colleen and Corey thing of like, them trying to edit it like, who's gonna be there first? Is Corey gonna catch up? But there was just too big of a difference between Corey and Colleen for Corey to really catch up, no matter how good of a runner he was. So this is where we get our placements. We have Emmanuel as our winner. He's the first one to cross the finish line, followed by Nerys and Colleen as second and third place, winning 60K and 30K respectively. Corey shortly after, because he at least wanted to make sure he finished the final, and Berna at some point later on in the future finished. Everyone finishes. TJ is happy that everyone finished and no one quit, because you know how he thinks about quitters. So I'm like, but a case could be made that only 4 of them should have finished. And so let's look at it, because Emmanuel wins. I'm gonna say this right here. If Nerys was this winner, you're getting a whole different reaction from TJ.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, you are seeing Nerys running in and TJ being like, you did it! You fucking did it! You beat all of them! You got your revenge! Like, how do you feel? Like, you've won 250K. You are a challenge champion. And it's like, of course, all these people prefer the money. But it was like, what I liked about Corey was like, you heard Corey say like, yes, the money is great. I want that title. This is a show that I loved growing up. I want this for the representation, all that stuff. Like, Nerys wants that title of being a champion, as well as that paycheck. Emmanuel definitely leans money before it, because, this is life-changing money for his family. The fact, side note, shit on you, all you want about Emmanuel. Learning that his grandparents never had, don't have heat in this day and age is wild.
So here's what I'm going to say about Emmanuel.
Go.
He won. Go. He won. Congrats. But if we have the story with his grandparents there, which sure, that's horrible. It's touching. If he can help them, that's great. It's what he should do. but he's spent so much time talking about how this is going to change, his life, his mom's life, his grandparents. I want to see how he's using that money to help them, because if he comes back and, in 2 years, his grandparents still don't have heat or whatever, fuck you, Emmanuel. Just, you don't get to say, oh, I'm only here for my family or whatever, and then never actually go back and help them. I want to see how you actually go back and help them. If you go back and you help your family, am I going to give you more props? Probably not. I'll respect you a little bit more. Not that he needs my respect. He won. He's on TV. Good for him. But I just don't want to, if he does come back in the future, I don't want to hear more crying about my family, my family, my family. He's been on shows now. He's gotten money. There's no reason why he couldn't help his family if that's really what he wanted to do. Maybe that's harsh and out of line, but I want to see it actually done, or I never want to hear about it again.
I mean, that's fair. My thoughts on all of it is just like, people are trying to discredit the win because he's boring. And I'm like, you can't discredit his win. Like, he said himself, and you can't truly deny it about TV all you want. Like, not good TV, bland as hell, wasn't anything that could have been drama, wasn't on camera, which was him cheating on his girlfriend with like a third of the cast.
Half the cast, yeah.
Yeah. But he did the game, he said it, I agree. The game lined up perfectly for him. It did. Like, he was in a spot where he never had to be like the big honcho. He got to ride an alliance of other people and using their connections to keep himself safe. The few times where he was even on the chopping block, people wanted to hit other people, like hit an Ed, hit a Corey, hit other people within that alliance before actually hitting him, while the other side was targeting Emmanuel. And he was able to use that. Like, he was able to use that to never actually... There was only like one point in time where he actually could have been in an elimination. Potentially two with the CT chaos. But there was never a moment. He played a game that involved sitting back, letting other people do stuff, and get to the end. Like, we've seen it with other champions. CT's most current wins are him sitting back doing nothing. We just like CT. And even when it's a more boring version of CT, everyone's like, but it's still CT. A boring CT is better than most people. That's the only difference. The only difference is you're not an entertaining winner. And he'll be the first to tell you, he's not there to entertain us. Unfortunately, this is a show where production should want to only be inviting people back that are going to drive ratings. And you drive ratings by being entertaining. And so my hope is, if he were to come back in the future, one, it needs to be with Jordan. They need to be in an elimination together, because I'm not going to just wait for this to inevitably happen. I just want it to happen. Have it happen, move on. But my hope is, through that, we create a character out of Emmanuel. We create something entertaining. He's willing to be more like dramatic and chaotic within a game because he has won.
Agreed. Yeah,
because now you got the winner's purse. Now you got that winner's purse. 250K is nothing to sneeze at, even though can't do all the stuff that you say you want it to do. So choose accordingly. But now you get to fight for, well, each time I come back, I get that champion's money boost as being a champion from coming on the show. And the more times I come on the show, that appearance fee gets higher and higher as those tiers go. That's what you should be fighting for now. If you want to keep doing this for your family, you need to bring entertainment to it. Because at some point in time, that phone call will stop coming if you aren't giving anything to them.
Completely agree. I clearly not an Emmanuel fan. I'm not going to say that he didn't deserve the win. He dominated the final. All the credit in the world to him for that. The one comment that we got a little bit ago was, unfortunately, Emmanuel is going to get the Jenny West treatment. No, that's not unfortunately. That's good. If Jenny West isn't coming back, then I don't want to see Emmanuel come back, because I thought we got more from Jenny West in the season than what we did in Emmanuel. Now, while what I will say about it is I disagree with them not coming back. Like, I think Jenny West should come back. I think Emmanuel should come back at some point, because if you're the current champ, not that you necessarily have to be on the next season, but I think you do at least deserve one more time back to see how it goes. It isn't an automatic ticket that you keep getting, the phone call season after season, but you deserve to come back and try to, quote unquote, defend your title. So I do want to see both of them come back, but if Jenny West isn't coming back, I don't want to see Emmanuel come back either.
Right, and I feel like I had to separate that argument, because me and you are both of the mind that we would want to see Jenny West come back. A big portion of why Jenny West in Total Madness isn't shown is because of the stuff that happens with D. Because a lot of her story was intertwined with D. A lot of the drama with Jenny West was tied with D, and as soon as MTV decided to whitewash that, there was no more of a story. There was no more story for Jenny West. It was just getting to the final and winning. And with Emmanuel, I would say it would be an indictment on the show if he didn't come back. As much as I'm not the biggest fan of him, but I can root against him at the very least. If you don't bring the champion back of a season where the whole point was we need to find a new champion. We need to find a new champion out of this crop of young, or quote unquote young, even though some of them are the same age as the vets, of a less experienced challenger. We do all this, and then the only people you call back are the people who didn't win. I feel like it's an indictment on the show, because then you're saying well, I don't know.
It was a failure.
Yeah, you're admitting that you didn't like the result of your show, and this guy actually isn't good. And that's up for the fans to decide more so than production, in my opinion. But that's enough.
So I was going to say, going through kind of what we have left, I have two questions for kind of each person that made it to the final. And it's not, our opinions on it, just what we could foresee happening. So if we start with Emmanuel. So Emmanuel, number one, do we see him again?
I think ultimately we do.
Okay. I agree. I think we see him again. And then I guess number two is, does he get another win?
If they let him get to a final, then there's a good chance he could. That's my thing. Is I think if he shows up again, depending on the makeup of the cast, because he is friends with a good amount of these people that weren't on the show this season. That's the story I want to see now. Is you won playing off the backs of your friends. I want to see that turned around on you, and you had to fight from underneath. That's what I want to see. All of our favorite characters on these shows have had both. We've had them win from up top, lose from up top, win from underneath, lose from underneath. But it makes a more compelling person for you to continue to root for. People aren't Cara fans because she won. People are fans of Cara because they endured through the ride of her struggles and her ability to come from underneath of all that and learn how to embrace it. Same with Bananas. Bananas' first few seasons was horrible. Not good outcomes. And then he wins on the island, and then he figures out what he needs to do, and now he's winning on the top and figures that out. CT, self-explanatory. Same with Wes. Wes had to have his fights from underneath, but gets his chance with CT, wins from up top. That's what I need to see from him. Is I want to see his ability to fight and play this game when 80% of the cast isn't just going to be aligned from him because of other people.
Yeah, as much as I hate to say it, we just took it down to betting to, over under 1.5, championships for Emmanuel. It pains me to say it. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he won another final. Not that he necessarily win his next final, but if he keeps getting 3, 4, 5 more opportunities, I wouldn't be surprised to see him win again.
I wouldn't be surprised. Okay,
So
let's.
instead of
I
we go
like
to
that you started
Nerys.
this because this is exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So you hit
So
me with Nerys.
so we go to Nerys. I think it's easy. Do we see her again? Yes.
I don't know. Yes,
It would be
yes.
shocked. So then 2 with Nerys is, will she win a final at some point in her career?
I think depending on she has the potential to win. Like
Mhm.
if you said it right now, it's just like a half. Like she wins one.
Mhm.
I could more confidently say yes because the things that held her up are things that are fixable for her, which was like
Agree.
mental gaps in the puzzles, which is actually her strong suit. Like if she's working on her swimming and like she's working out with Horacio now, so and that's the other side of it. A lot of if we go back to like more partner specific seasons and themes like that, she has a good arsenal of friends and enemies that she'll be partnered up with.
Mhm.
So I could see I can see that future of her being a champion. And maybe that's me being blinded by me wanting to see it because she's been someone that, as I've said on this podcast, ever since she was on Are You the One, I was like, she was just like right there with Cam for me. Of people from Are You the One that was like, you are made to go on to the challenge. I want to see you on the challenge. I want to see you win on the challenge.
I agree. I think she gets one at some point. I almost could see a Nerys comes back and her next time she stumbles a little bit and doesn't do as well,
Mm,
but then it puts the motivation, but the fire back in her of not just I can't rest on I got to the finals last season. I came back, maybe was humbled a little bit. I went out in a way I wasn't proud of, and that fuels her to getting a win at some point in her career.
there you go.
All right.
Okay.
So we go Colleen. Will we see Colleen again?
There's a smaller chance, higher chance than Berna. Mainly because there's a part of me that wants to see her come back and everyone be like, well, we will not work with you because you play like a rat. And like embrace it. Like you played a great
Mhm.
rat game. And like self-surviving and all that. Like great job. But it's the same issue as Jay. It was like that only works one time. That
Mhm.
does not continue to work over time, especially if you're not creating the connections that you need to move forward. But I'll lean towards no, but it's like a
I'd play not strong that I'd say we're gonna see her back. I think we will. That's the way that I'd lean that we'd see her back. But I think all that she's done this season is given her one more opportunity. And what leads me to
okay.
the next one is would she win? Can she win? I don't think she ever becomes a champ.
No.
And I think it's more she comes back the next time. If she gets taken out, in week 1, week 2, I think that puts the nail in her coffin that we don't see her again unless she has some crazy hookup or something over
Mm-hmm.
the top that we haven't seen from her thus far.
Right. And you know what? The other thing that came to my mind is it's the Nam effect. If Nam got to have potentially 3 opportunities, I guess Colleen deserves a third as well.
Well, I mean, on this season, she spent more time in half the season than Nam ever has total.
I mean, true, true. Um, but yeah, so I put her as a does not become a challenge champion.
Mhm. Okay, so let's move to Corey. Same thing. Does he come back? Does he become a champion?
As long as the timing works for his real life, I think it's abso-fucking-lutely
That he comes back or that
that
he's
he
a
comes
champ?
back.
Okay.
Champ, hard to say. Hard to say. I love him. I think I lean no, but I don't know. It'd be a wild ride.
I'm with you on that. I think if his schedule works out, there's no way this is his last season of the challenge. Even if he has to take a few off, I think we see him again. Now, unfortunately, if he does have to take a few off, he could fall into the effect where, whatever happened to them, and he stops getting the calls. But I would think he would get the call, and if he can make it work, great. But I struggle to see him ever becoming a champ.
I think he is someone who actually would have to fight from underneath the next time he does. Like, I
Mhm.
don't think this, like, perfect scenario, especially when he almost fucked up that perfect scenario to start off the game. I think there's more opportunities where he would have to show out in elimination, which I think
Mhm.
would actually be beneficial for him. To show that side, because as soon as you show that part, because the first season he was on, he basically goes out the second time that he's in
Mhm.
elimination against Huey. Um, but he beats Jay at like sort of like a speedy-ish balance based, but ironically balance based competition
Mhm.
in the final here. So like it shows that he can beat good competitors. And if you let him get to a final, he's now shown outside of a balance beam, he is a formidable opponent in a final, especially when it comes to the eating. Like he throws up afterwards, but he licks that plate clean. So there's a lot of pros to him if he can get there. It's one of those, like, if he gets to more finals, it's similar to Emmanuel, where I'm like, the odds of him winning one are higher.
Mhm. No, that makes sense. And I don't know. Do we even need to talk about Berna? I think that's no's across the
No
board.
and no.
All right, fair enough. Moving
Yeah.
past Berna. Well, then let's at least she got eliminated this episode at the very beginning. Let's include Mariah.
I can see a yes. I know a lot of people say no and she's not made for reality TV. I get that. But again, the nom rule. And I can see a third time given the fact that they do still have a potential storyline out there for her if she were to come
Bananas.
back. And end of the day, she is a good competitor. And like you do need to have some people on the cast that can do a lot of the physical stuff.
Agreed. I think there's a good chance she comes back, as much as some people may not like that for how boring she's been. I think the one thing that depending upon which direction the challenge goes moving forward. So we know 40's coming up. I believe they leave within the next month or so to go start filming
Right.
40. And then it's going to come down to, if we're going to still keep cranking challenges out as we have been the past few years, I think that only increases her chance of coming back, because not only are there more chances than what there was, 10, 15 years ago, but B, it seems like we're going to get a pretty good cast for 40. We're going to see a lot of people that, let's say it's been a while since we've seen, but have taken some seasons off, pulling some people in from All Stars. And I think when you're using that to make up the cast, you're not going to get those people again, at least for a little while. So like a season 41, wherever that may appear, a 42, I think that's where Mariah slides in. She's not going to get the call in 40, I don't think, nor should she. But a 41 or a 42 where you're not getting as many yeses from the cast, I think that's where you see Mariah again.
Very likely. And it goes to say for this season, it had its ups and downs, and there are people on these that we will not see again. Even if I want to. And some of them I don't want to, and they will not be back. But I think this was a success asterisk of a season. Like looking back on it, I think I maybe will like more. I'll still hate part 2 of the season. Even though I love the champions, I felt that really dragged the season out, especially with all the non-eliminations. The eliminations themselves weren't that exciting. So I'm hoping some of those come back in 40 and like you get some of the more hard, not like lack of a better term, hardcore eliminations.
Mm-hmm. More of the classics.
Yeah. But that pretty much wraps up the 39th season of the challenge and our coverage through 19 episodes. We made it, Dan. We crossed the finish line. TJ's just looking at us, like half thrilled, saying, "You did it. You did it." Dan, how do you feel? What are you gonna do next?
Oh, I would say, rest up in times for All Stars 4, but we still have no idea when that's coming. We're told potentially it's coming. And I've heard that potentially we're going to get a trailer for it at some point during the reunion. Whether that
Okay.
happens or not, who knows? I've heard dates going as like mid-March. I've heard other dates saying, oh, it's not going to come out till April. No one really knows. So I guess I'm just going to enjoy a little bit of challenge downtime until hopefully All Stars 4. I don't want to be the next time that we're coming back being season 40, because that would actually be too long of a gap.
Absolutely. But you won't miss us here on Reality After Show. Even though one franchise is finishing up, another one is heating right back up. We still will have our Survivor coverage for season 46 that's premiering next Wednesday. For sure, Matt Bischoff and I will be there. Dan will be there whenever there isn't a watch party in his area. Johnny will also be
none
here
till
when
May.
he's not. Yeah, not until May. And Johnny will be here when he doesn't have watch parties as well. So we have that. Dan and Johnny are also covering Australian Survivor, Titans v Rebels, and they actually just had a great interview with the most recent voted out person. I will not do spoilers here, but you can find it on wherever you're listening to this podcast right now or on YouTube. Which subscribe, press that bell for notifications, give us 5 stars. If you're listening to us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever, give us 5 stars, give us a good review. And the best way to support us is by becoming a patron at realitypatron.com. That's realitypatron.com. Try it for 1 month. If you don't like it, we'll give you your money back. No questions asked. You'll get some Australian Survivor coverage from past seasons as Matt Bischoff's slowly getting through all the former seasons of Australian Survivor, as well as the weekly Q&A podcast, which is just us talking the shit and saying what's been going on in Johnny's crazy ass life on a week-to-week basis. It's our favorite podcast of the week, and I know it'll be yours too. So become a patron at realitypatron.com. Dan, did I miss anything?
No, cover that. I guess Johnny's also covering the Traders, generally with Rachel Riley and other guests that either are currently on the show, have been on the show, or have been on past seasons. So make sure to check that out. The Traders coverage has been awesome. And I think that's it. Yeah, we have Traders, we have new Survivor coverage coming up, and the continued coverage of Australian Survivor going on. So despite the fact that Alex and I will not be here each week discussing the challenge, at least for now, we know that break never lasts too long. There's still plenty of us to go around across the Reality After Show feed.
Absolutely. So congratulations to all of us for completing TJ's final. None of you quit on us. And you know what TJ thinks about quitters. Never quit. And we will see you all next season.